Well, after a week off, we return to Canada for this week's Canadian Grand Prix. Will we see a different Max Verstappen? Will the local boy, Lance Stroll, be driving? Here to discuss with me, as always, Mick. How you going, mate? Did you enjoy the week off?
Yeah, it was good to have a break, but looking forward to getting stuck back into the racing. Yeah, interesting weekend. Are we going to see Stroll? He's tipped to return, but we don't really know. But for me, the biggest one is what sort of Max Verstappen are we going to get this weekend? Are we going to get the aggressive balls to the walls, Max? Or are we going to get the reserved, let's just get through these next two races, Max?
Yeah, well, that's the interesting question, isn't it? I mean, I don't think Max Verstappen is really going to approach this weekend any different. Obviously, the top brass from Red Bull will want him to, reel it in and make sure he doesn't pick up that one solitary penalty point that will give him that automatic one race ban.
Like you said, we've spoken about this. I think Red Bull will just want to make sure he's there in Austria and then, being their home Grand Prix, being their hero. Max has got a massive following there as well. So they'll just want to make sure he can get through this weekend. Whether he can or not, when the visor comes down and he's in the heat of the battle, remains to be seen. It's going to be interesting just to see how he approaches the weekend.
Yeah, well, so Canada, I mean, it's one of my favorite circuits, the Gilles Villeneuve circuit, being host to the Canadian Grand Prix since 1978. So it's got quite a lot of history there. It's also been one of those tracks where it's, the weather can play a massive part in it. Those walls are pretty close as well. The Wall of Champions.
It's the home of the longest Grand Prix ever, too, in 2011, when
Yep.
Jenson Button, I think, made 6 pit stops to win the race. So,
Yeah, also the venue of Lewis Hamilton's first ever win, also for Danny Rick as well. So, it's definitely had its moments. Also, one of those big moments was obviously in 2007 when Robert Kubica had that massive accident, probably one of the biggest ones, in recent times. And then he bounces back the following year and gets the win. But weather-wise, look, it's always quite unpredictable. We tend to get a lot of wet weather races here, but it's going to be cool conditions. And we're looking at pretty much the whole weekend, 20 to 22 degrees. So nice and cool, bit of sunshine, bit of cloud. Also a big month of motorsport. I mean, we've got Le Mans coming up, also the N24. Big June, obviously only the two Formula One races, but plenty of motorsport to go around. But how about we start off? And we've got to start off really. It's Red Bull. That's where most of the focus is. Obviously, both sides of the garage. Max, can he survive the 1 point? Yuki, can he close the gap on Max? What do you think here?
this weekend, Max will survive. I actually think Red Bull are going to be on point this weekend. Cooler conditions, cooler track conditions. So they're not going to have the struggles they normally have with the tyres overheating. Max I think is going for 4 in a row here. So, he's pretty stout around this place and like I said, the cooler conditions I think will suit their car. So I think we'll see Max up the pointy end. Um, Yuki on the other hand, yeah, man, he's got to close that gap. That's he just needs a quiet weekend. Just get as close as you can to Max. Don't qualify last, and pick up a big bag of points.
There was some news that came out about Yuki. Apparently, Red Bull have given him a bit of leeway with how to set the car up or make some specific changes for him. Apparently, they did a little bit of simulator work. Obviously, for Yuki's case, it's extremely important because we're coming into that critical zone with the mid-season break coming up. So he needs to really prove his worth, and it's time now because he's had plenty of races under the belt now. So he just needs to get a good, not necessarily bag of points, but he just needs to show that there's that progression there.
No, I believe he needs a good bag of points because he's got 10 points in 7 rounds. That's not good enough. Like, it's plain and simple. Look, I don't hate Yuki. I want him to stick around, but 10 points in 7 rounds is not what Red Bull is expecting. Simple as that.
On to Aston Martin, because naturally, again, we don't know if Stroll's going to take that seat, if he's healthy enough with the wrist surgery that he's just had. It'll be quite a big blow. Hometown, the local guy. So, naturally the Canadian Grand Prix promoters would love to see Stroll there for obvious reasons. On the flip side, this could potentially give a really great chance. Look, we're assuming it's going to be Drugovich's. We could be completely wrong here. Yeah, it's potentially a massive opportunity for Felipe Drugovich to stamp his credentials as a future Formula One driver if he gets that chance.
Look, at the moment, Stroll's tipped to come back. Now they're saying because of the time difference between France and Montreal, basically Aston Martin will have sort of till the end of FP2 to make a decision. So I mean, if he does come back, he can do the first 2 practice sessions. They can assess his fitness from there, and then if he's no good, then you get either Drugovich or Van Dorn in to do FP3 and then qualifying and then the race. If it's Drugovich, which hopefully it is, provided Stroll's not in the car, everybody thinks he's got the goods to be in Formula One. So a good audition for him if it happens.
Yeah, it'd be great to see. And Alonso will hopefully build on a pretty solid performance last out with where he picked up some points finally. And, you know, we've seen, we think that Aston Martin car is progressing quite well, you know, through some of the upgrades I've bought.
Yeah, it's definitely taken a step forward over the last couple of races. So, you know, in order for them to capitalize, ideally you need both your drivers in the car. Because that battle between, I think it's 6th and 10th in the constructors is only separated by 17 points at the moment from 6th to 10th. So, you know, it's super tight. So ideally you need both guys in there. Alonso's generally going to extract the most out of that car, but we've seen Stroll, you know, at times show good pace, and you know, we've seen the proof in qualifying that they have seemed to have made a decent step forward. And again, I think they're a team that will benefit from the cooler conditions.
Another team that a lot of eyes are going to be on is naturally Alpine, because we're looking at Franco Colapinto. Big weekend this week. Hasn't really had the best introduction back into Formula One for this season. How do you think he's going to go?
That's the one seat that's probably up for grabs at the moment. You know, we've heard from Briatore. We don't know if it's a 5 race or he's got the whole season. You know, the reports of Mick Schumacher possibly getting a shot. So that's the seat that's up for sale, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, he just hasn't sort of come to grips with the car, and he's sort of just struggling. But Alpine are a funny one because, you know, it's a bit similar to Red Bull. Like, they've only really got one driver that's maximizing the performance of the car at the moment, and that's Gasly. You know, he's managed to score a point last week in Barcelona. So, yeah, again, I think they've taken a little step forward. Probably not expecting much more than what we saw, say, again, in Barcelona. I think, you know, Gasly could be there or thereabouts in qualifying, sort of bottom of that top 10. But yeah, Colapinto just needs to get his head down, man. Just another quiet weekend, get himself comfortable in that car so he can try and extract some performance out of it, because at the moment he's just unable to do it.
Look, he has a talent. We know that he can be fast on his day. If it is a 5-race stint, if that is really what it is, obviously this is a big one for Colapinto. Coming into the 4th, he just needs a good showing. And again, just needs to make sure he's clean and just stay within arm's length of Gasly. Doesn't have to out-qualify, outperform Gasly. He just needs to show that there's a progression, that he's taking steps in the right direction. And I think if he does that this week, I think a bit of pressure will come off him, and then we'll see a better Colapinto the following week in Austria. It was not the following week, but the following race in Austria, and then he can probably build from that. But I mean, essentially, the destiny's in his hands, so he just needs to perform. That's really what it comes down to. Now let's talk about Ferrari. You know, it was a real downcast Lewis Hamilton after the last race. I think he probably looked back at that triple header, and because he came in with a lot of optimism, because we discussed it. We saw the media and everything, and he just seemed perked up. It was like the motivation was back. What Lewis Hamilton are we going to see this week?
It's interesting because as a team, Ferrari have done pretty well. They did pretty well over that triple header. They jumped up into second in the constructors. But I think really for Lewis, his biggest thing is he just needs a consistent car. So he can be consistently quick in qualifying and then consistently quick in the race. Not have a shit qualifying, a great race, or a great qualifying and a shit race. You know what I mean? It's just he just needs to find some level of consistency with the car. Now there's speculation that they're going to bring a new floor and that rear suspension that we've been talking about. But look, I think this track will sort of suit them because it's heavy braking and big on acceleration, traction out of the corners. So I think that kind of suits them a little bit. So I'm expecting both of them, and Lewis is good around here. So
Yeah, actually, it's a good point. I did read an interesting statistic for Charles. This is actually one of 3 circuits where, from a head-to-head to his teammate, he's actually at the receiving end.
yeah,
And so that's quite interesting. And we know Lewis Hamilton has some really good history around here. I believe it's one of those tracks where the drivers that take that little bit of extra calculated risk get rewarded.
it was resurfaced last year, so it's a nice smooth surface, low downforce, heavy on braking. It's probably one of the heaviest on braking of the season, and really important traction. So the cars that can maximize that the best are going to be the ones that will perform. And I think, yeah, the lower temperatures of the weekend, I think qualifying especially, because the track isn't used throughout the whole year like some other circuits, the track evolution is going to be super high again. So, could see something similar to Monaco. But, again, they're bringing the softer compound of tyres. We could see something similar to Spain where we have that real mix of different tyre strategies in qualifying. So you might have, an extra set of softs in the race or an extra set of mediums in the race, or you use a set of mediums in qualifying, etc. Yeah, I think it's going to be super tight. Saturday is going to be super important again.
Now with Mercedes, I think for Mercedes this weekend, it's a big one for Kimi Antonelli because he'll look back at that triple header. I think he'll be pretty disappointed. Look, he had the mechanical issue in the last race. Obviously, scrappy weekend in Monaco. Imola, he would be looking at as, home race. It just really didn't pan out the way he wanted it. Ended up with a mechanical failure as well, didn't he? So big one for Kimi to sort of bounce back. So I think it's a good test for the young gun to see how he bounces back from a little bit of adversity there. Russell, you can't discount him, of course. It always just seems like Russell does nothing and then he ends up on a podium or he's close. No disrespect to Russell. He's a great driver, but he just seems to not get into much mischief unless he's close with Max, of course, which we saw at the last race. But yeah, look, I think this is Mercedes' weekend to really bounce back after I would term as a pretty substandard last few races.
Yeah, I mean, I'm expecting them to be solidly in the points this weekend. Again, the lower track temps are going to suit Mercedes. It's a fact. They've stated it. Hot temperatures just, for some reason, doesn't suit their car. So I think that they're looking at this weekend going, yes, cooler conditions. Yeah, Kimi, apart from Monaco where he had the sort of scrappy weekend, you could say, and he binned it. Apart from that, the other 2 weren't really his fault. So, I mean, mentally, you could probably put that aside. I think that's more for the team to worry about, making sure, because we've said they've probably been the most consistent car so far. And we saw over the triple header that consistency, for whatever reason, just tail off a little bit. So, yeah, they're definitely looking to bounce back. But I think this will be the weekend that they'll bounce back pretty decent.
And a team that it'll be quite interesting this week is VCARB. So RB, Hadger and Lawson. Obviously because of the speculation if Max picks up a point. So I guess, there's probably a little bit of a point to prove between both. They want to one up each other to sort of show that they are the ones deserving for that seat should it open. Look, Hadjar, we've gone on about him a lot. At the moment, Rookie of the Year, he's just been consistently good. We've seen him make mistakes but bounce back. He's shown a lot of, mental grit. Lawson, I still believe he's sort of building into a season. He just needs to clean up his Saturdays. He did come out and he made a point that where things are going wrong for him is just purely the Saturday. He's not consistent enough, and he's getting tied up in a group of cars where he believes the RB is quicker, but naturally, if you're behind cars hard to pass, you're burning out tires, etc. So I think for this weekend, his main aim is just absolutely nailing that Saturday.
Hajar's just got to keep doing what he's doing, man. He's not putting a foot wrong, showing the mental toughness. Probably is a little bit of a shootout for that Red Bull seat. Again, Max has got to get that point first before any of that to happen. So I guess they can't really look at that because it's too much of an unknown. And if you start thinking ahead to something like that and it doesn't eventuate, it's not really going to play into your hands. Lawson, yeah, man, he's just got I think the average gap at the moment in qualifying is around 2.5 tenths difference. So he's just got to close that up, and with that midfield being so tight, that 2.5 tenths, like imagine if he qualifies somewhere around with Hajar, how much better his Sunday would be. Like I think he's relatively comfortable in the car, but just Saturdays, he's just not quite getting it together.
I think he'll take a lot of confidence coming in because you can sort of see the performance gains are definitely coming in relation to his teammate over like practice, etc. But yeah, just Hajar he just seems to have that edge and gets it together when it's needed on Saturday. And that I think that's really what's given Hajar that advantage come Sunday. He just puts himself into a better position. But it'll be interesting to see how RB go because they've shown that it's a pretty quick car when it's in its window. So I think they'll go pretty well here. And yeah, I think double points this week for RB. Now, Williams, look, it was a dirty race, wasn't it? Last time out. It's a bounce back weekend, plain and simple.
That Williams was not suited to that circuit last time out in Barcelona. The long sweeping corners, James Vowles said doesn't suit our car. This weekend, low downforce. We know that Williams is slippery in a straight line. And I think they'll be in for a good one. Albon's just, I think, might surprise a few people in qualifying based on current form. Like he's just super quick at the moment. Sainz is probably struggling maybe a little bit more than what we think. So he'll be looking just to get a handle on that car. And I think, again, this sort of circuit will definitely suit Williams.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll be disappointed if they don't come away this weekend with double points. I expect them to. Again, little promotion here for Stake. We normally bring them in last. They had a really nice time last race. Hulkenberg in the points. Bortoletto not too far off, and he was looking pretty handy and pretty fast himself. We think they've made a little bit of progress with some of these upgrades that they've brought in. So this weekend is going to be really interesting to see if they can continue that progression. Do you see some points this week?
For me, they're probably one of the teams that's taken the biggest step forward. Now, obviously, last time out in Spain, we had, the new technical directive. Did that really help them? We don't know. I guess we'll find out this weekend. As far as points, possibly. I mean, we've seen Hulk over that triple header, man. The race pace in that car's been, relatively solid, man. So it's definitely not out of the question.
Now, Haas, 200th Grand Prix. I can't believe it's been 200. It just feels like only a few seasons that they entered the sport. Already 200 GPs down. Bringing out a special livery to celebrate, which I've actually seen. Looks pretty nice. I do rate it. Ocon, Behrman, was spoken about. Ocon, he's, looks like he's starting to lead that team from the front, which is good, which is precisely why he's there. Behrman, been a bit scrappy at times. Last weekend was probably not, he was probably a little, got into a few battles there, penalty, etc. And he's had the, the red flag issues over the triple header. He'll be looking just for a clean weekend. But we've talked about it, the pendulum team. How did they go in the last race? Terrible, right? So what do we got this week from Haas? Just based on what we see.
Yeah, well, if we're going off our usual pendulum, bro, top 10, easy. Lock it in.
Just lock it in. We don't even have to say anything else. Lock in Haas for a top 10. Celebrate their 200th with some points.
Yeah, look, again, this will probably be a circuit that will suit them better. They'll be better than they were in Spain. I don't think they'll be last. this weekend.
And speaking of the last team, McLaren. Now, the reason why we've just bunged them on the end is because, well, look, they're the dominant team. They're head and shoulders above everybody else. The flexi-wing directive hasn't affected them whatsoever. And we have 2 drivers there that are capable of winning this year's world title. No disrespect to Max, because I still think he can as well, outsider. But what can you say about them? We know that they're going to go in as favourites. And the only way I see them having a bad weekend is if they basically trip over themselves.
Yeah, 100%, man. They're coming in as clear favourites. It's Saturday, right? Don't mess Saturday up, and you'll be sweet for Sunday. So then the only battle is between Oscar and Lando on Saturday. Now, Saturday's still not Lando's strong point, so he needs to fix that. Based off that, you would say Oscar's probably primed for pole. Oscar's going for his 6th win. Lando's looking for his 3rd. So it's all to play for. But I think, yeah, don't trip up on Saturday and you should be sweet. Because I think if you trip up on Saturday, I got a feeling, man, that Red Bull's going to be fast this weekend and Max is going to be in the mix.
Yeah, I agree. But if you're a betting man, who have you got, Oscar or Lando for this week?
I still got Oscar, man. I just think, yeah, Lando just still quite hasn't nailed Saturday to the way he wants. I mean, look, it's so close. It only takes the most minuscule of mistakes or putting a wheel a centimetre wide, and that will be the difference between pole.
I can't disagree with that. But as far as predictions, what are you looking at? Who are your top 3? And who is the driver that's most likely to surprise?
All right, so my top 3, like I said, I think that Red Bull is going to be super fast and it's going to be super tight between Oscar, Max and Lando. I think that's your podium. In what order? Depends on Saturday, I feel like. So, my driver likely to perform? I think Russell. I think he's gonna bounce back. The conditions are prime for that Mercedes. He was on pole there last year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think he's going to be in the mix as well.
If I'm going podium, I'm going to go Lando out front, P1, Oscar P2, Leclerc on P3.
You know, Ferrari's got a good engine package, low downforce. They're going to be slick in a straight line. So that's not a bad shout either. But for some reason, I just think Max he's going to be angry with a point to prove. But I think
that's what scares me.
But I think he's going to do all his damage on Saturday.
Yeah, I think he will be a good shout for pole on the front row. But I think somewhere along the lines, point to prove, super aggressive. You can't put that guy on a leash.
Well, you know what would be good? Max and Oscar, front row. Boom. Oscar gets an awesome start. Hangs her up the inside of Max. What's Max going to do?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. And that's where things get dangerous because then you take away the instincts of the driver, right?
Yeah.
With this penalty point hanging over. But I think if you look at most of those drivers on the grid, well, all of the drivers on the grid, if you think who it's going to affect, I just don't think that affects Max because I just think his instinct doesn't change. It's just opportunity, go for it.
Yeah.
Regardless of outcome.
Yeah, and I mean, we've already said Max has already kind of said he thinks the championship's over, so he's got really nothing to lose. You know, it's just whether Red Bull are like, hey man, we really want you at our home Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Or they just go, you know what, dude, is what it is. Like, I mean, Max will do what he wants to do anyway. So
yeah,
I don't think Red Bull putting him on a leash is really going to have an effect. But yeah, it's just an interesting dynamic because it's a situation where we've kind of never really seen Max have to be put in before, I guess. So, yeah, does he give a shit? Or does he not? And just sends it. Hail Mary's the thing.
Just send it, Max. That's all we want to see.
Yeah.
Just send it.
Yeah. 70 laps on Sunday, I guess, will tell us everything we need to know. Let us know your thoughts. Leave them in the comments. We love to hear your guys' feedback. So until then, we'll catch you in the next one.